All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Deb Peters. I am the Speaker of the House of Delegates, and I'm your host tonight as I give you tips and information to help you, our House of Delegate member, whether you're a delegate, an alternate delegate, wherever you are in your journey, and what I hope will help you feel equipped so that you can enjoy and excel at your experience at the House of Delegates. I recognize some names on here, so I recognize that not all of us are new to the House of Delegates, so I titled this just an introduction for our new or our newish member. I do have my chat open, so if you have a question as we go along, go ahead, pop it in the chat. If it's something that I can stop and take right at that time, I will. I invite you to be as interactive as you can and go ahead and turn your camera on so we can all participate together and get to recognize each other a little bit more, or not, whatever your comfort level is. And I've asked Michelle to help monitor that for me as well in case I miss anything. So let's go ahead and get started. So as I was thinking about, what I wanted to bring to all of you today, I want to say this is not the session where we're going to explore all of the nuances of parliamentary procedure. That's next time. However, I do want to review a little bit of your duties. Where do you get more information to help you feel like you can excel and enjoy this? What is your time commitment? What are the calendar of events? But if you have that burning question or something that I didn't quite frankly get to or answer, I'm going to take, just general questions at the very end. And also, again, I'll be trying to monitor that chat window as we go along. I see a few of you in my screen on the side. So if you have your camera on and it's easier for you, feel free also, you can do your the raise hands feature, underneath your Zoom controls as well. So here's where we're at, right? By now, you've all received the program for our upcoming scientific session in House of Delegates. It's in Lansing this year. I just put this up here so you take note of the dates if you haven't already. Get those in your calendar, as we move forward, because we're heading to the middle of our state capital, for our meeting this year. So this hopefully looks familiar to some of you. This is the Lansing Center, and this is where we host the House of Delegates meeting, as well as where we have the scientific exhibits, the CE classes, some of the social functions. So this is the Lansing Center. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time, I am a former speaker of the House of Delegates. I've had a little bit of a 6-year hiatus. I just rejoined the board last year. And while I am the Speaker of the House of Delegates, that means I chair the meeting for all of you, the delegates, the delegation members, the executive directors, who convene one time a year generally at different cities around our state and discuss business in front of the House of Delegates. For me, this location has a little bit of a memory to it because this was the first place I ever chaired a House of Delegates meeting many, many years ago. And like all of you who can go back and think about your first in things, maybe, the time your child was born, or the day you had a great day in practice because it was the first of something, or maybe it's something back in your youth. For me, this was true also of the House of Delegates. I started studying parliamentary procedure in the 1900s. Literally, I was a student delegate, and when I aspired to this position because of my nuances for parliamentary procedure, Lansing was the first place that I ever chaired a meeting. So I'm happy to be back there again this year, and I look forward to meeting all of you as we move along. Remind me at some point, I'll tell you about my first meeting because we had a very exciting power outage in the middle of a very hot, contentious debate. So as we go along, we have a lot of acronyms in organized dentistry. I like to call it the alphabet soup of organized dentistry. And sometimes I forget and I use these a little too loosely, but you'll see them in your written material. So here's a few just to throw up. And this one I'm sure seems obvious, but a lot of times we'll just call the House of Delegates the HOD. Reference Committee is quite often noted by RC. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the reason I think it's important to note that is the reference committee is a group of your peers that are the hearing panel for any of the business that comes in front of the House of Delegates. And if they take in different considerations and rewrite a resolution or a written motion, they put their initials in front of it as RC. Board of Trustees are elected by the House of Delegates, come from all around the state of Michigan and serve 3-year terms. Your executive committee are your officers. So these are people who are elected from anywhere from a 1 to a 3-year term and make up a portion of your Board of Trustees. And sometimes you'll see recommendations coming from your EC. An important standing committee of the House of Delegates is the Committee on Credentials, Rules, and Order. And I have a habit of quite often calling them the CRO. You're going to see this the opening day of annual session because the Committee on Credentials, Rules, and Order are a group of our peers who are very detailed oriented and check off their credentials of all of you as you come in to make sure they match what's on our list and make sure we have a quorum to do our business. They'll go through and oversee some of our manuals before we get started. So that's the Committee on CRO. And I threw a new one on here this year because it's going to be a little bit more relevant. And that's the initials AIPSC 2D. And it stands for our parliamentary authority. In other words, it's the book we use to help us facilitate our business if something isn't specifically written down in our guidelines. In other words, in our House of Delegates manual. And it's written by a group of parliamentarians that we belong to an organization called the American Institute of Parliamentarians. Yes, we do exist. I just got back from our meeting 2 weeks ago of about 75 of us. And they just came out with a new edition that went in effect January 1st of this year. And there are some provisions in AIPSC, the second edition, that are going to perhaps change the way we do our business, not only at the Michigan Dental Association, but the American Dental Association when it comes to presiding and meeting format. And so I wanted you to be aware of that. You can see I don't often want to write this long word out, and so I often will abbreviate it and say it as such as AIPSC or AIPSC 2D. So common list of acronyms. I'm sure if you see anything else or it doesn't make sense to you, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm one of these people that when someone will throw something out and I don't know what it is, I'll just ask them. That sounds good, but I have no idea what that stands for. So don't hesitate to ask me or anyone else in your delegation as well. I'm already getting questions about this, so I wanted to start today by emphasizing that the host hotel, or where a lot of the events are for the delegates or for the delegation members, are at the Marriott on the campus area of Michigan State, so on University Drive. So this is the area, this is the hotel where that is hosted. And I just wanted to emphasize that because I've already been getting a couple emails and texts about it. This is where you will meet on Saturday in your regional caucuses. If you're driving in for the day, I just want to let you know there is a parking lot, nearby. If you're staying over, this is a great place to stay because there are, shuttle buses that will take you back and forth as well. So that's the Marriott University. And if you look in your program, it says host hotel, and that's why. That's where we'll be housing our governance team so that we can more quickly move around for the caucuses or for the regional caucuses on Saturday. So I started this presentation with my 3 E's. So let's get into the first one, shall we? Here's some information to help equip you. If you had your name turned in your delegation, turned your name in to us ahead of this date, we just put this out. Michelle does a wonderful job of collating all the information, and we put it into a format for you called the Delegate Digest. And this is the most recent one, but it's the one that has a lot of the information for you, the delegate member, in particular if you are a new delegate. You'll notice there's a click link right here in the middle that will take you to a bunch of information. But I didn't get this. Where do I find this? So again, your name is, when your name is submitted, your email is in, but I understand how many emails we get a day. So this is a tip that I use and I readily pass along to a lot of people is, when it comes in under Michelle's name. So let's say Michelle M. Nichols Cruz, or you can search Digest. And you'll notice that in my format here, this is in my Apple email. I star her. She's a priority. So I know when those come in, they group them all together. That's one great way to make sure you don't ever miss any information from us, particularly in these next couple months. We're going to start getting you information a little bit more quickly as it comes along. My next thing that I do is I slide these emails that they come in. So the delegate digest comes in, I'm clearing out my emails for the day. Maybe I don't have time to stop and click and look at everything. I've got a patient or my kid needs me. What do? I think I pulled this one up in my Gmail. So Gmail calls them labels, Apple's calls them folders. Microsoft, everyone has something different. And I just drag and drop right underneath my House of Delegates tab. That's a great way to make sure when you get all this information, find a way to, one, always identify it, priority. Two, drag it into a location where you could readily have access to it, because chances are it's not coming in at an ideal time for you to look at it. And this is our best way to communicate with you. You'll notice this is just a little bit of the digest. We even give you a hint over here. We even say, when you click on this, you're going to want to bookmark this link. And then we have all kinds of information, and it goes on and on from here. So this is one of my suggestions. This is how I do it. This is hopefully to equip you. Know that the Delegate Digest exists just for you. It's written just for the House of Delegate member. It has all the information that you need, and perhaps a little bit more, to be successful, in this role. Let's explore a little bit further what happens when we click on this. So it's not enough just to get these, slide them. You have to make sure you go back and clear them out. It's really important that you click into some of these links, because that's going to take you directly to your information, to your data. So what's it look like when I click on that House of Delegate webpage, the one we said to bookmark? So here we are. So you couldn't find your delegate digest, you scanned in, you decided, you're going to go through the website. So you type in michigandental.org, you go under, your leadership central, and you hit House of Delegates. So that's a lot of clicks. Or again, you just save the digest and it's one click, bookmark it, and here we are. Here is all of the information that I want you to know that is there for you and will be updated regularly. So here's the schedule of everything that's going to be happening. Here are all the resolutions as they get posted. So resolutions, if that's a different word, that is nothing more than a written motion. So if there is a motion out there that the MDA purchase lapel pins for every member of the House of Delegates, and that's the motion, it will be in a written format with background for you to view. And so by you bookmarking this site, you can come back and keep yourself updated without having to reread everything all over again. Other good information on here are House communications. One click takes you to all of the delegate digests. So maybe you were newly elected as of December 1 of 2023, but we sent out a delegate digest in the fall. You can go back and click and read that information as well. If you're really curious, you can read the transcript of last year's House of Delegates, but I want to direct your attention to the very bottom. Soon, the nominating committee of the MDA, also called the NomCom, will be releasing a slate of candidates for the open positions. And that is one of the most vital roles that you, the House of Delegate member, fill, is electing those people. So their information will again be on this page underneath this link. So by saving that digest, going and checking it regularly, or bookmarking this page, you're going to get almost all of the information that you need in order to feel like you're successful, feel like you have the right tools, and then we just have to help you apply those to be a House of Delegate member. Any questions of where to find things on the webpage or the delegate digest, feel free to either put it in the chat, raise your hand so you'll pop up on my screen. Any questions before I move on? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. There are a couple documents that I suggest that you at least look through. If you're a new or newish member, or perhaps you're a delegation chair and you want to help the newer members of your delegation feel successful. And this is one of them. And this is the bylaws of the MDA. And this is the document that the House of Delegates has authority over. But in this document, it also gives the powers of the House of Delegates. And those powers are to advise the Board of Trustees. And the reason it's written advise is if you put forward a motion in the House of Delegates format or at our annual meeting, everything is to advise the board to do something, to look into something, to figure out how to fund it. And then they have to report back to you by their first meeting. How well did they do, and are they implementing, or does it need further study? So everything is advised. However, as a House of Delegate member, you can advise the board of directors directly. In other words, you can call any member, including myself, and say, hey, we have this issue going on in our component. Here's a solution we were looking at. How would you suggest we carry it forward? So you have the power to advise directly and via your resolutions. This document, as are almost all bylaws documents, can only be amended by a supermajority vote of 2/3 of the House, and that is underneath the power of the House. Another very important document that we all subscribe to as dentists under the American Dental Association, the Michigan Dental Association, is our Principles of Ethics and Code of Professional Conduct. And the MDA has additional provisions in that, which we call the MDA Code of Professional Conduct. Some people just refer to it as the Code of Ethics. So it can't be amended by the Ethics Committee. It can't be amended by the board. All those suggestions have to run through the House of Delegates. And one of the final powers of the House of Delegates is to elect all open positions, whether that be a board member who's a trustee, an officer, or an ADA delegation member, or someone who represents us at the national level on an annual basis and from the delegation. So important document, written in typical bylaws language, but I would suggest you can access it on that page I just showed you, but you may want to pay particular attention to the section of what are the powers of the House of Delegates. Now, while this is a little bit of a dated video, it can say in 1 minute a little bit more about what your time commitment is and what you stepped into as a House of Delegate member. So let's take a listen. Okay. So that gives you a little bit of idea of time commitment. And we first put that video out there because there was a transition. Your time commitment as a delegate, it is actually for 1 year. It isn't from now until the end of our meeting on April 20th. It continues for 1 year because it's that advisory component. It's that staying up to date on what's out there. And if the Board of Trustees or the EC reaches out and needs to hear more voices, that's why we request that you stay informed. So we put that together so that people would understand all the different time commitment. I will wholly agree that the majority of your time as far as your hours will be spent in April in Lansing. You're going to spend some time together tonight, a couple training sessions, then with your component as well, and of course reading. But we do recognize the fact that our obligations are as a one-year commitment. So what does that look like if you are a delegate or an alternate? And I really think of those as the same, because you never know when you're elected an alternate if you're going to have to step into your delegate role. So one of the first obligations of a delegate, of course, is to be well informed. And what are some ways you can do that? Delegate Digest, of course, but also your MDA e-newsletter that gets sent out to you. As members of the House, there's more data that gets sent out to you than gets sent out to the general member. You're going to get your fiscal facts newsletter. You're going to get updates from the executive director. You're going to get a Delegate Digest. You're going to get information, as it pertains to ADA stuff. Read your ADA news. So all those different ways to keep informed, I think are really helpful. And you'll find out what is your cadence as you absorb that material. The second, of course, and I kind of alluded to this, was to be that communicator between your peers in your component and the MDA. So as you work within your caucus regions before coming to the House of Delegates, you're kind of going to get an idea. Well, what are the members in my district kind of thinking about, or in my component? And then it's your voice, because they don't all show up at the House of Delegate hearing. Luckily, you do. And you're that communicator, you're that voice. And I think when those are done well and those are taken seriously, it really helps us as an association really, excel in that area, to the point that a well-informed delegate can have influence. And that's one of my favorite words, if you've heard me speak before on leadership, is influence. You can actually influence the direction that we're going as organized dentistry, and be that ambassador, be that bridge between our association. And when you get involved and you feel that obligations as an informed person, as a communicator, it really helps with your enthusiasm as you move along. So I mentioned there was kind of 2 documents that I suggest you read. Here's the second one. And this is our House of Delegates manual. And you'll notice at the bottom I wrote the standing rules. So this has great examples in it of how to give certain amount of testimony. How do we amend it a certain way? What are our rules that we follow within the House of Delegates? You'll notice it has a date of last year on it, because it is one of the first items of business that you will do on Thursday, opening day of annual session, is you will adopt this year's manual. And I kind of already alluded to the fact there may be some changes in there because of AIPSC. But this is probably one of the best things to review if you've never been in a House of Delegates before, just so you get a flavor of what the business is like. It's a little bit different versus maybe one of your other civic organizations that you go to and they go through a formal process, or something perhaps in your church, or something with your kids' school. There are just different rules. So a little bit of a quiz, a little bit of a participation time. So put in the chat for me, what is one common motion utilized by many groups in parliamentary procedure that is not utilized in the House of Delegates? It's a particular motion we don't use. Any ideas? I'll give you a hint. I move that we all reconvene in 30 minutes. What's the next thing you usually hear in your organization? Any ideas?
A second.
A second. Thank you, Sue. A second. Yes. So in our organization, as well as in the ADA, we do not second our motions. So that I remember being on the DS before, and I quickly moved past it after a motion, and I started hearing rumblings like, where's the second? And it's in our manual, but years ago we stopped requiring seconds. So keeps our decorum up, doesn't make people have to gain recognition, but more importantly, in a group the size of our House of Delegates, which is 102, if you don't have one other friend who's going to at least second your motion to get it forward, I just feel that that's so minimal. So again, I throw that out there and thank you, Sue, for answering that. But yeah, we do not have seconds in our House of Delegates, but you're going to see other examples of those things put forward in our House of Delegate manual. And again, we'll go for a deeper dive in those in our next one. So you guys already know one of the quiz questions for our next meeting. So you're going to be well ahead of all those other people. The other, and I just throw it up here for you, is just this is, unless you really, really want to deep dive, I just want to make you aware that this is the book that we use. If something isn't mentioned in our bylaws or mentioned in our House of Delegates, we turn to this authority, AIPSC 2D, to look for guidance. And as I mentioned in my introduction, there's been some changes in that. The ADA adopted some of the earlier changes. So there is one important change where we will be implementing on amendments that's coming out of this version. So I put that up there, not that you have to read it, not that you have to become a mini parliamentarian, but just so you know, it's another document that I utilize to help facilitate your meeting for you. So who are the committees that help us at the House of Delegates? So these are committees of your peers, and we have 3 standing committees that work a little outside of our meeting time. And the first one does exactly what its name implies. The Bylaws and Language Review Committee takes any resolutions, again, those are just written motions that come in that are making suggestions or amendments for the bylaws, and they make sure that it fits with the language that's in there. It's not addressed in another section of the bylaws that we're not looking at. Quite often, a bylaws, amendment will come in and it's looking at just that one specific section, but if that's adopted, it may affect a different section. So that's what they just make everything coordinated. They don't do anything to make sure it's adopted or not adopted. They just look at that language review. I do believe we're going to have some bylaws amendments to be looking at this year, so that committee will be active. We already discussed CRO and their essential process in our meeting. Again, a lot of the things that they do ahead of time, reviewing that manual, making any suggestions. And then lastly, when I was going over our alphabet soup for the MDA, the reference committee is a panel of your peers who listen as a hearing panel to the motions on Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon. And then they take all of that information that they hear, pro, con, questions. They get the answers to the questions. They draft it into a report and they put it back to you, the delegation member, in a format with a recommendation to adopt, not adopt, amend a different version of any of the motions that are in front of you. So those are your 3 committees of your peers who kind of work outside of the House of Delegates format. So this is kind of what it looks like. A lot of long tables, linens on there. There's sections, where I have your component names, so you'll know where to go. You'll have a map, so you'll know where to get seated. You'll notice there's numbers. Those are on microphones. Those are more for our debate when we get into some debate. And what I really, really want to emphasize here is, how do you get access to the House of Delegate floor? The challenge with our meeting in Lansing is not all of our hotels are a quick, easy, walkable distance other than the DoubleTree to the Lansing Center. So I showed you where you're going to caucus and where our host hotel is, but that's a little bit of a distance away. Our House of Delegates is in the Lansing Center, and please arrive at least 15 minutes early because there's going to be a QR code on your badge that has to be scanned to get you into the floor. If you are an alternate subbing for a delegate, particularly on Saturday, which means that's the day we vote, we need the delegation chairs to get you credentialed. We can't just scan your alternate badge and let you in. We have to get you on the official credentialed as a delegate. This happens every year. It slows down admission to the floor. So please know that, please show up at least 15 minutes early so that we can get you on the floor to be able to be credentialed. You know what? Come early. You can walk around. You can still talk to your peers. There's usually coffee, tea, water. But please be there so that we can start on time. Opening time, 8:30 a.m. Time are we going to try to be there? 8:15. So after we have our opening meeting and we adopt our agenda and we adopt our manual and we hear some opening comments, that takes roughly 2 hours. And the very next thing is we break just to put the stage down, and a panel comes up of all of our candidates. And it is one of the most essential roles of the House of Delegates to elect all the open positions. So this year you'll be electing members to the Board of Trustees. You'll be electing your officers, a president-elect and treasurer/secretary, and you'll be electing the ADA delegation members to the House of Delegates. Please, these are your peers who put things out there and are dedicating themselves to run for these. Take the time to listen to what they have to say. Stay in your seats. This is the time where everyone can move up. So if you're sitting in the guest section, you can go past that. You can move up. You can find an empty seat wherever you want so you can hear. But I want to encourage you, these move one after another. We open the House of Delegate meeting. We do our introductory business. We convene for the day. We move right into the candidate forum. And this is chaired by your president-elect. So there is a little bit of switchover, but you're still in your active duty as a delegation member. That takes roughly an hour, and then we give you lunch.
One moment. I didn't get that. Could you try again?
My Siri's breaking in, guys. You turn her off. So I'm sorry, back up. So we have our delegate forum, or our delegate forum, our people that are running for office. And then we go into lunch. So you do have lunch as a House of Delegate member. It's there. You don't have to go out onto downtown Lansing and try to find a place to eat. And then we go into our reference committee. And again, you can sit anywhere you want. I suggest sitting as close as possible so you can hear. And this is where people, and I say people because it could be members, it could be non-members, will stand up and give testimony to a panel of our peers, our hearing panel, which is called the reference committee, starting at 12 noon. Next time, we're going to go over a little bit more about what is effective testimony, but you'll hear people speaking in favor of a motion. You'll hear people speaking against a motion. You may hear people asking questions. You may have questions yourself, and this is where we get our work done. So please come prepared. You know, your commitment that first Thursday is from about 8:15 in the morning till about 1:15 in the afternoon. And it will, after we're done with the reference committee, unless you're on that reference committee panel, then your commitment for the day as a House member is over with. Okay? Thursday, go to classes, enjoy yourself, have social functions. Again, Saturday morning, you're going to reconvene in your caucuses. I'm not saying your caucus starts at 8 a.m. That's up to your caucus chair, but these are just the published times, but there's some time in the morning. And at those caucuses, you'll be, with a group of your peers, and you'll discuss the motions. You'll discuss maybe if you're going to amend the motions. Maybe you'll have questions that, procedural questions you'll call me in for. Maybe you'll call the president in. You'll hear candidates. This is an extremely, extremely important meeting, and I can't stress it enough. And I just want to remind you, please do not take CE on Saturday. I recognize your commitment, your dedication to our profession by giving up Saturday, but there is no time to take continuing education courses on Saturday because you'll start in the morning with your caucus group, and then we go back into the House of Delegate meeting that afternoon. So let's go on to the afternoon. Our second meeting of the House of Delegates starts at 1 o'clock. Again, we're going to get there at least 15 minutes early so we can start on time. We start on time where we can move through our business. What you notice here is they're voting. They're in the process of voting. And so I just want to quickly go over what does it look like when we vote. We do a little bit on Thursday, most of it on Saturday. And one way to vote is general consent. In other words, if there's no objection. So sometimes I'm hearing testimony, sometimes there is no testimony. It's a super simple motion, such as the motion to adopt the agendas of the House of Delegates. Rather than going through and being extra wordy, the speaker will say something like, the motion in front of you is the motion to adopt the agendas of the House of Delegate meeting. If there is no objection, the motion is adopted and you adopted the agendas for the House of Delegate meeting. Next item of business. So a little bit quicker. So that's called general consent. The next way that we vote things in is a voice vote. A little bit more challenging with a group, 100 people. But sometimes simple motions, we can do a quick voice vote. And usually when that is at the beginning of the meeting, I realize people haven't reached into their packets and they haven't pulled out that, in this case, it looks like a yellow card. I don't know what color card it will be. And so I just quickly do a voice vote. Again, it's for simple motions, things that you think are going to move through pretty quickly. Other motions, particularly motions to amend or to make a primary amendment, the first amendment of something that's in front of you, is a simple majority, is easily done, and we'll do a raise card vote. And so I'll ask you to raise your cards. All those in favor of the motion to amend by blah, blah, please raise your cards. I'll look. Cards down. All those opposed, please raise your card. So it's a little bit easier to get a visual on the assembly at that time. The last way to vote is our voting machines. And again, this is why I stress the fact that on Saturday, the day we use our voting machines, please get there early enough because again, your name badge is scanned and you're going to get a voting machine as you go in. Without that, you won't be able to vote unless it's just a card vote. So on our voting machines, any motion that's going to take a supermajority, 2/3. Maybe I think everyone has it, but it's a little hard for me to count how many cards. Do I have that 2/3? And so rather than hesitating, we'll take it on the electronic machines. It's projected for the whole assembly to see. The vote will be announced, and then we'll move on from business. And we also use those voting machines, those electronic voting machines, to vote for our candidates. So that would be a very private, you'll push numbers to vote for your candidate. So again, showing you that there are some signs, you'll know where to sit. There'll be a map in your packet, and those are the simple ways that we vote. Questions about voting in the House? Okay. Again, you can get the schedule on your Delegate Digest or screenshot it right now. Here's some important dates I would like you to add to your schedule. First up, coming in a little over a week, is a virtual trustee forum. This is an event where a few of the trustees will discuss in general terms some of the business coming up in front of them the following week. All members of the House of Delegates are encouraged and invited as guests to attend the Board of Trustees meeting. You'll sit in the guest section. Last time, we had roughly 4 House members attend. It's a great opportunity to learn about what your board does. Our next time together, Tuesday, March 26th, for our parliamentary practice training. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Please, please, please put the 26th in your calendar. That is where we'll do a deeper dive into motions, how to write resolutions, what is the proper way to say something, etc. If needed, and I believe it will be, we'll have a bylaws open forum on Thursday, April 11th. This isn't just a hearing. This is where you'll get more information as well and be able to ask questions. And lastly, the really important meeting on Wednesday, April 17th. I encourage all components to send at least 2 people to this meeting because this is where you meet the candidates. It's also where you're going to play a little bit. You're going to put these things into practice. You're actually going to practice amending. You're going to actually get an opportunity to do this in practice session before you have a chance to do it live. But also, it's just a great way to start your process of moving through. You'll notice this starts now at 4:30 in the afternoon and will be done by 6:30. Has a light reception because Immediately following, you are all leaders. If you're on here tonight, you are a leader. And there are a couple events I want to highlight as we wind down for the leaders, which are you. And this is the first one, and it's the Sparkling Smiles event for the MDA Foundation. It starts at 6:30 on that Wednesday evening. And I want to encourage you all to really attend. Last year was the first year I got to hear everything because I've always been a house member and there was some overlap. And listening and learning about where the funds go to different programs is vital. And as leaders, it's good information for you to have. And you know what? You're there already. So an invitation from the MDA Foundation will be coming out very soon. The second event that I want to bring to your attention is another one, and it's on Thursday night, or I'm sorry, it's on Friday night. And reason I say this is over the years, all of my years of being a member, by attending the president's event that's honoring our president, Dr. Eric Knudsen, and Dr. Beth Knudsen, his partner from the UP, is a lot of delegates are there. And I start to hear people talking about things because the reference committee report is out. So again, it's another opportunity to meet with your peers in a fun format on that Friday evening. So if you're staying over, you're coming in for Friday, I just want you to know about that event as well. I felt that attending that over all my years as a delegate to the MDA was really helpful to helping me gain a better understanding of the business in front of it. So just a couple of fun things to put into the enjoy category of your journey as a delegate. Here's our contact information. Go ahead and screenshot it. If you need to get a hold of any of us, feel free to text me as well, or you can give me a call, email. Michelle is our governance manager, and I put her information up there. Again, all this information can be found in the Delegate Digest. And making sure you save that and click through at the appropriate time and read that information is really, really helpful. Before I wind down, what burning questions do you still have? Go ahead, turn on your camera, shout them out, put something in the chat. What time does the meeting usually adjourn on Saturday? Christina asked. Great question. Christina, I thought on this and, I always hate to commit to a time because it just depends on how much business is in front of the house. But when I went back and I looked, we're usually done by about 3:30. So about 2.5 hours. Could be less, could be a little bit more, but yeah, usually around 3:30 the house is convening. Any other questions that you have curious about? Anything else? Okay. I'm now curious, okay, because I gave you a couple hints. I try to think about this from the area of what can I give you to equip you with if you're a newer or a newish member. But enter in the chat for me one thing that will help you feel like you're equipped as a dentist, to help you, as a delegate, to help you enjoy or excel as a member to the MD, to the House of Delegates. Because I'm just curious, what do you think will help you? Is it something you heard this time? Is it a mentorship by someone in your component? Anything like that, I would love to know so that we can make sure that we get that out there for everybody else, right? And as I conclude, just want to remind you, I hopefully will see you guys all again on Tuesday, March 26th at 7 p.m. And that is for that deeper dive into more of that AIPSC2, how to write a resolution. I'm going to go over a little bit on, effective ways of giving testimony, whether that's at the hearing or the House of Delegates. We'll practice a few little nuances of how to amend and what to amend. So we'll get into a lot more detail on that one. So are there any other questions? I see the chat lighting up, so that's great. Good. I was wondering what what was helpful. Donald says the procedures and protocols really help. Absolutely. And I hate the fact that as a new delegate, I felt like I had to experience it first. So hopefully talk to other people as well. You have any questions, you can always reach out. Tamika says discussion with other delegates or parties that have been involved longer. Yeah, that's absolutely one of the best ways to get more knowledge of all of this. We want you to feel like you can jump in right away. Because remember, an informed delegation member has influence. And I just think that's one of the really cool things about what we do. And there's nothing more influential than electing people as well as having a voice in your bylaws and your policy. So I want to thank you all for your time, your dedication, and most importantly, your attention. For all of you who showed up here tonight, I appreciate all of that. And I look forward to seeing you on our next presentation again on Tuesday, March 26th, and again live when we go live in Lansing. And if you come up to me, I'll tell you a little bit about my power outage story at my first House of Delegates meeting. So until then, take care, be well, and just keep smiling, people. Thanks so much.